And live, Joel, I'm so happy to talk with you. I'm a heavy Metamask user. I see you every day, basically. You pop up, on my computer every day, Metamask think, and so for me, you are like family, basically. I see you every day. So I was curious about how did you start this Metamask adventure, first of all?
Interesting kind of backstory to it, but I built my first Chrome extension, I believe it was, I think in 2011. It was a filter for Hacker News. It was kind of cryptocurrency related. You could highlight things or unhighlight them. And then I built another one the year after that was actually a cryptocurrency, was a digital currency wallet. I was working on my own eco currency. So I had experience building wallets inside of browsers, basically. And then in the early Ethereum world, everyone was trying to build these downloadable clients, like this new browser for the decentralized internet, which was a really great goal. I still share that goal. I think it's amazing, but they were quite clunky as far as the user experience. And I was, I don't know, kind of like a UX guy. I liked, and I wanted genuinely people to be able to experience Ethereum and mass market. I built consumer apps before. So I was like, guys, I think the browser is where we need to be. I think it should be a browser extension. And I think we should get a team to work on it. And really, it was, me, Gav Wood, Vitalik, and sitting there in DevCon 0 in some side room. And then they're like, yeah, I mean, if you can put a team together, we'll fund it. And then, then the story diverges a little bit because some of the founding team, they're like, Joel, you're not doing enough development. And I'm like, I know, I have a lot of other projects. I just thought it was a really good idea. And if you give me some credit, I'll be appreciative or something like that. So then it kind of took multiple forms and ended up in part of consensus and all that. But it was a good ride, and it's a great project and product and everything else. And, sometimes Joe Lubin credits me for it. Sometimes he doesn't.
It depends by the day, if it's bull market or bear market. That's interesting. One step back. Did you study coding? Are you a self-taught coder? What's your background?
It's a bit of a mix. I started when I was 6. I think I had this magazine called 321 Contact. I don't know if you know that. There were like these little like coding exercises. You go in like Q Basic and like, do some go-to statements. And I always really liked games. Like I was into logic puzzles and playing games and designing games. So my like first real passion for developing things was actually like, hacking things in these games to make them do something different. And they got more and more complex. And then I won some scholarship when I was 13, I guess, from taking like some tests and getting some good scores on it. And then I used it to take some programming classes at the local college. And then, the rest was kind of history. It just came very naturally to me. So yeah.
Okay.
And then,
interesting.
And my dad and I had a little bit of a conflict. It's like, Joel, you should go to MIT. And I'm like, but Dad, I want to do philosophy and arts. And he's like, no, be an engineer like your father. And I kind of won, but I'm kind of doing stuff with MIT now, like many years after that. So I kind of like have done some things in the humanities semi-successfully. Now I'm back, like, in my roots, I guess you could say.
That's really interesting.
But coding is in my blood, I guess you could say, at some level.
Okay. And is there any specific language that you are passionate about, coding language that you are really passionate about?
Interesting enough, though, I just created my own programming language finally. So
really?
For making metaverses, yeah. So I was like looking at all this metaverse stuff. I was like, this is kind of like okay, but not like really that exciting. What you could do with a metaverse, like if you really wanted to like go deep into what metaverses could be. And so I was like, what if like you change something about how you approach space and time, add some extra variables and stuff like that, then you could really actually just write a programming language that generates metaverses. And it's a great, awesome, fun project, honestly. Yeah.
I tried to do some coding long time ago, and I was really bad. Perl, PHP, MySQL. I thought, oh my god, that's so difficult, this stuff, and that's it. So I don't understand how people can even code normally, or even inventing a coding language. This is out of my. Well, where do you start if you want to invent a new?
Well, it helps to know a lot of coding languages. So all the ones you mentioned, I was in ASP in the very beginning, and then when it became .NET, I did .NET stuff, and I've done Perl stuff, I've done C stuff, I've done C++, I've done all the different Ethereum languages and different coding stuff. So I don't know. I guess I love languages actually in general. I speak like 7 different human languages as well. So
Right.
it's like a passion of mine. And sometimes you find that like certain things, like the difference between expressiveness between Russian, German, English, and Mandarin is all quite different. And you find something you like about some language, and you're like, I wish I could use that more often, but it's not in English. English is not quite the same way, and then you kind of like do that. So it's similar with computer languages, basically. Like you find like the way, like I remember when I first discovered Ruby, and I was like, this is so cool, like the way they do the syntax around certain things. And I don't know, people like me, we get excited by things that maybe not everyone gets excited by, but then yeah, it can be cool. So
It's super interesting also because
yeah.
it's the framework for everything that we use, so it's very important.
Mhm.
And Metamask, in what language is coded Metamask?
Original version, so I haven't been involved with MetaMask for a long time, just to be clear. So even though I maybe like technically started the project, but it was all JavaScript basically. So in the browser, you don't have a lot of options, as far as what you can use, and pretty much all the browser extensions are coded in JavaScript. So
Right, got it.
it's kind of this nice thing, but it leads in because there is this opportunity to totally rethink how browsers are done, because we kind of inherited really this kind of structure of the internet and basically how people came up with domain name systems and all that, and then the browser is like our way into that. But the kind of infrastructure that's around Web3 is very different, but people still haven't really like totally rebuilt and rethought the browser. So I don't
Right,
know.
got it. And when you started Metamask, was anything else really out there as a wallet that was possible to use? I mean, what I imagine was the hardware wallet,
Yeah,
and
well, the interesting thing, so Vitalik's name for MetaMask in the very early days was called Vapor. And he thought this was really funny because it's Vitalik's sense of humor, which I partially share, because we had another thing that was being sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation at the time called Mist. And basically, it was like that downloadable kind of Go client. It's kind of this idea, Ether, like things are there. They're kind of like of this whole nother world, basically, that you have to approach. But people were building these sort of downloadable clients that basically were supposed to be all the different things you needed for this kind of Web3, Ethereum experience. And it's actually quite rare that people build them today, but I think it's still quite needed actually to go back to that era.
and how do you explain that MetaMask surged to this level of success? I mean, I don't know how many millions of users, but it's like the de facto standard. I don't know, if I buy on OpenSea my NFTs, or I sell my NFTs on, I mean, it's only MetaMask basically. So what's the reason behind? What do you think?
Well, I think first of all, Consensus did a great job, with kind of being there. Kind of, sometimes people maybe refer to me like the seed, and then they're more like the womb, But they have really done a great job of like providing a lot of core infrastructure and place for people to work on this stuff kind of full time over an extended period of time, because the crypto market has like up and down cycles. So it's very critical to like kind of keep on building the infrastructure, and think about it that way. And there's just really important kind of core tooling. But then similar to what I said in the beginning, the browser is the way that people look in, and not everyone in the crypto community, from day one, because I've known many people from different projects, has been that concerned about the UI and UX and kind of onboarding people, and the language and even the marketing kind of needed to do that. So I think that's a critical component, and I think justifiably MetaMask is kind of at the top, when it comes to expressing that.
Got it. I was wondering about security and how to deal with security. Because with my paranoid mind, I couldn't sleep during the night, thinking about people trying to hack into my MetaMask, infrastructure. But maybe it's because I'm ignorant and I don't understand how it's built, something like that. how do you deal with security when you started the project? What was the thinking behind?
I think it's a big problem, and it's in general. I think that those of us who are early days, are always about cold storage, hardware wallets, all those kind of things, and I think it's still a critical thing that again is in some ways underdeveloped. But there's really no way. Like it's a big problem on your PC, to keep it super secure, locked down, all of those things. Extremely difficult. And it's extremely difficult because of the way that these, software systems and hardware systems were designed. Like they weren't necessarily designed for like security first. And now that you're dealing with like high, financial value assets, it turns out that there's a whole bunch of holes. Like if someone manages to get to your computer and stick like a USB in it, boom, all your security is gone. So
Right.
it's a really big issue. And the same thing if you accidentally download the wrong thing or you click the wrong link or all these things, and so if you're like super savvy and aware all the time, maybe it's reasonably easy to avoid these things. But for ordinary people who haven't been exposed to that, it's actually quite tricky, especially given
Right.
the sophistication of some of the hackers. So um I don't know. I've been thinking about this quite a lot, like how to kind of redo things to have really a consumer friendly but also very secure environment. And I think like there's this thing where basically the stuff that is consumer friendly is not secure, stuff that
Yeah.
is secure is not consumer friendly. And is there some way to get the best of both worlds? I know some of the people, for leisure. I know that, founders of Trezor, like they're great people, I think, in general, and they've spent a lot of effort. And so I totally applaud that. I hope that there is some solution out there, but I don't think there is a solution that's like in the market today that
I
really
see.
checks all the boxes. Yeah.
Because Joel, I would be petrified, for instance, on a if I was the Metamask developer, or I mean, the founder. I would be petrified by the idea that maybe we have a bug and could be a hack, and they steal all the money from all the wallets in the world, and then they say that's your fault, was fault, or or that was a wallet bug. So how do you deal with that? Is something that you can somehow anticipate, or
Yeah, I guess it's like similar to any wallet software or any kind of browser extension thing from the very beginning. Is a nice thing. It is like a effectively containerized within the environment. That was one of the reasons why I built I was aware, because like I said, this wasn't the first kind of browser extension that I had worked on that had dealt with cryptocurrency. But then the kind of default way of that is kind of asking the user to custody their own keys and kind of handle that themselves, client side, which, like I said, is fine. I mean, it's basically the best we can do right now with like the standard technology. You write down these things, do not keep it on your computer, keep it on a piece of paper, keep it offline, put it in a safe, whatever else, so that it's not super easy basically for someone to hack you. And yeah, and unless people are willing to kind of take some of these hardware wallet stuff. But I've been frustrated, frankly, that a lot of these hardware wallet stuff don't integrate. Like they require like sometimes require a lot of firmware updates all the time, and it's actually gotten a little bit frustrating as far as the user experience. So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
But
this is a big problem for adoption, because if I talk with friends of mine that are not really into tech, I mean, the idea that they, or I give you an example. I sold my NFT some times ago, and I mean, the level of complexity for a normal human being to download a wallet, install a wallet, buy Ether, convert fiat from fiat to Ether. I mean, it's like no chance. It's no way that you get a mass adoption like that. So probably everything has to be, also the UI has to be probably more friendly. I don't know, but I wonder what do you think will be the next step for wallets? Because I read an article from Vitalik. It was talking about social wallet or something like that. What do you think is a good way to improve this experience, create a mass adoption, if it's possible? I don't know.
I think, yeah, you have to go back to the real core infrastructure layer that a lot of people shy away from, I guess, maybe because they're not programmers or they don't really know how it all works. But and it takes longer sometimes to do it like the right way, so to speak. But I think it just has to be done at this point. Like you really have to go back into the browser, the kernel, the operating system, the kind of network infrastructure layer, and kind of build things like with the kind of optimizing for these things, and be prepared to sink a few years into kind of building something that has good. So there was
Right.
and I applaud the people. Like I said, I started the project, but they did spend the time, the multiple years of really working on the details to kind of get it to its current state. So
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
don't want to take any of the attention away from those engineering effort, because I know I've
Absolutely.
been through many projects. It's quite a lot of effort
Yeah,
to
yeah.
work on.
Also because it's not only launching a project, but the
Yeah.
developing, maintenance,
Mm.
debugging, and all the
Of
things.
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is a huge effort. This morning, Joel, I was chatting with one guy who is into quantum computing, and
Mhm.
I was kind of scared at the end of the conversation, because basically he said, "Look, quantum computing. I don't know how far is to come, okay, but is probably 1 year, 2 years, 5 years." He gave me a 5 years horizon, and then he said, at the moment, the impact would be catastrophic, because with real good quantum computing, you could, and he started to explain, get the private key from the public key. You could calculate that and basically get the money out of wallets, no matter what. If you have a hardware wallet, if you have the 24 words printed on your skin, I don't know, whatever it is, quantum computing would be catastrophic. So I was wondering, what's your opinion about it, and what companies are doing to prevent this?
Yeah, it's an ongoing concern, and I think there's so quite a lot of quantum safe encryption. There's a lot of people who think that basically when the problem is very clear and severe, then the solutions will arise, and I think it's kind of dangerous way to think about it, from the standpoint of people building what they're claiming is digital gold or the secure layer for the future of the financial internet. It's like sometimes when you look at the details of it, it's actually not as secure as you think, which is in some ways why I'm enthusiastic about innovation, but I don't necessarily spend a lot of time like shilling Bitcoin or shilling a lot of other cryptocurrencies, because I think I would in some ways prefer people take a more measured approach to them, rather than be like, this is the future of everything, get in now
Yeah.
before it goes up a little more. But I haven't. It is a free world out there, as I'm sure you're aware. So people say every kind of thing, and you can't really prevent anything for anyone from saying anything, due to the nature of social media and all of that. But I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely, there's a series of concerns there. Let's just say,
Oh,
and I still think it's early innings. I don't think, even though these things have done well and there's a lot of momentum, I still think there's a lot of opportunity for the sort of next generation of people to come in, and people to come in who are, let's say, I guess like more consumer focused from the beginning, because there's a sort of idea as well and the core of some of these cryptocurrencies about like this idea of like, I'm going to get in early and stockpile and then just hold
yeah.
on to it, kind of whatever else, versus like the design principles for how can we design a new financial internet that like benefits everyone and facilitates freedom, and some of the other things we're doing, which is in some ways more of a like broad design exercise, but it still often hasn't been done and hasn't really brought in, I think, the teams that could really succeed at scale. So I don't know. As much as I love the Web3 community, I still think there's a lot of opportunities to do things in the future.
Definitely. And tell me, so what have you done after launching MetaMask, working on it for how long, and when did you start to move on different projects?
So around the time of kind of the early MetaMask history, I also had launched what was the first cryptocurrency like crowdfunding DAO, effectively, basically the really first like DAO that was
Right.
made, because it was directly inspired by Ethereum, but we implemented it on kind of this colored coin protocol called Counterparty on the Bitcoin blockchain, because Ethereum hadn't launched yet. So we were kind of testing out some of the different things.
Right.
And it was actually very challenging for a variety of reasons, mainly technological reasons, but sometimes there's also like internal politics of these cryptocurrency communities. And then and that was going well in some respects, but not well in others. It was we decided to go the very conservative route of basically accommodating all of the regulation, and then we very actively engaged with regulators in many different jurisdictions,
Oh,
including the
wow.
US. And in fact, I ran the first cryptocurrency and the law related conference, or like co-founded it, like many other things, at Harvard and MIT. So we basically started at Harvard and then did a kind of MIT spinoff, and we invited the SEC to participate, and then all these legal scholars got together, and they basically wrote the utility token. It was me and a couple other people in a room saying, "Here's where we think a utility token exists. This is kind of the principles of what is like a legitimate and legal ICO versus not." And a lot of the kind of standardization happened basically all in this kind of room inside the like Harvard Berkman Center. Which was kind of exciting, but then I kind of went back to the regulators. I was like, "Here's what we did. You guys want to engage?" And
I
also, they
see.
really had no interest in talking, which was kind of disappointing because we spent a lot
Right.
of effort on it. And then later
When was
on,
it? When,
huh?
when was it? How
This
long
was like
ago?
January 2015. Yeah. So
Oh, wow. So like a long time ago, for regulators, it was like Ice Age. Okay.
yeah, they decided later on they really cared about the topic and put out a lot of information, but at the time, I don't know, they didn't seem to be very interested.
Gosh, 2015, by the way, I've been following this Assange DAO
Oh, yeah.
they have raised like, I don't know, 50 million, something like that.
Hmm.
Impressive, because I remember I've interviewed Assange years ago, and he was still in the London embassy. And the problem was that basically they their funding was completely cut off because
I
PayPal
remember
didn't
that. Yeah,
accept
yeah.
Visa, Mastercard. So that a huge issue there. But now is unbelievable powerful. I think this DAO,
Well,
this
that
DAO,
kind of saved them as well. The Bitcoin saved WikiLeaks for a while. I remember,
yeah.
or really like
Yeah.
made a big change in their kind of model. Yeah.
And what happened after your SEC encounter that was not so great?
So
Well,
basically, this project kind of ended up a little mothballed. Like we're like trying to follow all the regulations, but then we don't have a lot of things. It was kind of tricky to figure out what we could and couldn't do. And then this basically German-led team of investment bankers that I met in Palo Alto said, "We think this is amazing and definitely the future of like securities issuance and regulation and all this stuff. If we can actually do this stuff on a blockchain." And then they looked at the US regulatory environment and said, "I don't think we really want to do this here." A little frustrating. But then they went back to Germany and got it to be the first actually regulated and licensed DeFi exchange in Germany, so under BaFin. So it took again another 2 or 3 years to get the official stamp of approval, but
yeah.
they had the dedication and all of that. So applause to them as well for sticking it out.
Wow, cool.
After like such a whole
And so
period. And that
interesting.
project is called Swarm. It's called Swarm Markets now, but yeah, it was originally just Swarm.
Got it. And what's your focus now in the last, let's say, 12 months? What are you focused on? What are you passionate about?
Well, I got really deep in this sort of metaverse language stuff. And then once I realized what you can build, procedurally generated worlds and really cool, art projects and kind of immersive, fractal, interactions and stuff. I mean, I basically haven't looked back. It's like such a, like, I would say nerd dream, but to like be able to build these things, like because I was similar to like the regulator stuff. You like talk to governments and you're like, here's an idea of smart city, maybe dynamic governance feedback system. We can put in some data analytics, and then you get this like glazed look, like, why are you trying to change our system? Like, it's so. But in the metaverse, you can kind of do it like whatever you want. Like we have DAOs, like there's no limit to what we can do with DAOs. I was just saying, can we nest the DAOs inside, and then the sub nested DAO can then basically vote on the other one. And then I was talking with the founder of Aragon about that yesterday. I was like, yeah, we can do that. I was like, great. Awesome. So just like there's an opportunity of like feeling a possibility of things that you can build, which is, the thing I love the most about decentralization, or whatever you want to call it, is that basically it invites anyone to come out and build whatever you feel like building, and has this kind of positive energy about it. It's like the free, open financial internet. So that's what attracted me to it originally, and I still love that particular part of it.
I see. Well, what's the situation of the let's say the metaverse? At what stage of metaverse are we? Because when Zuck launched the Zuckerverse, I don't know how to call it, but I mean, and he proposed to become Zuckerverse and control the planet and beyond, also in the metaverse. Of course, that's Facebook vision to create their, I don't know, wallet, their garden, and okay.
I think Zuckerberg took the wrong lesson away from the Lord of the Rings. He's like, oh, there's one guy in a tower and he has one ring and it rules everybody. It's like, okay, no, that's the wrong lesson.
I was expecting something very open, like, okay, guys, that's it. We're called Meta, and now enable metaverse for everyone, interoperable, blah blah blah. But I think that's not exactly their direction, probably. And then we have the Sandbox, we have the Centraland. There's an Italian company, the Nemesis, that they're doing a metaverse that is, by the way, very good on mobile. And what's the situation in your opinion?
I think we're at this point, and we're potentially going to lead this transition, from like the 1.0 metaverses to the sort of 2.0 metaverses, where the first ones, they kind of proved the concept, like someone like myself who back in 2014 was writing white papers on distributed governance, was like, we had the idea of doing, virtual property and virtual reality, but there wasn't enough interest in the topic, so now there is, and now it's like the really cool things, basically the really amazing dynamic interactions, things can start to come about. So and start to pull in like the more classic, like really fine-tuned game developers, dynamic storytelling, but merging it with like the best of Web3. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, they've seen the worst of Web3, and then all like the scammy games or whatever else like that. And then you say, and then it turns away. People are like, I don't want to deal with that. Like Steam Store, for example, just, banned, NFTs. There's this whole kind of stink that happened between Discord and Metamask as well, and just, the problems of it. But then when you get the best of Web3, merging with the best of game design stuff, then something really amazing can happen. And I think we're starting to see that from at least my impression of what we're seeing as far as a project, because we've grown extremely fast. We've gone
I see. Do you expect like full immersive metaverse like Ready Player One? Do you expect augmented reality metaverse? Do you expect like metaverse that I enjoy with my phone? What's your
I gave a lot of talks about metaverse in the last year before going full force in, and I always said the same thing, like the metaverse is the bridge to the unseen world. Like you have some creative idea in your head, you have a pheromones of idea, imagination, dream worlds, whatever else, difficult to articulate, and then the metaverse is basically what's taking those and turning them into a form that I can easily communicate and share with you. And that's, it's not just digital property, whatever else, it's actually that whole package. And that goes into other areas, whether it's, let's say the more like psychedelic research side, or, brain chemistry, how do we optimize our brains, like all the kind of, neuroscience literature. It's basically all part of metaverse. And what Elon's doing, the idea, basically, I believe, and I think Zuckerberg believes it, I think Ray Kurzweil is there, that we are getting to the point both of the understanding of our own brain chemistry and cybernetics, that
effective telepathy. So will be possible, you think, like Neuralink, the study Neuralink is doing, you think is something that we're gonna get there?
Yeah, I think we're close, next decade or so, not before necessarily becomes consumer technology, but like available, to reasonably rapidly, express a complex thought to someone, in any other part of the world.
Wow. I think Elon already has the Neuralink chip. And sometimes when he speaks, I think, wow, this guy has got such a deep knowledge about so many things that I'm always very impressed. Have you ever met him or
No,
Or,
but we have a potential project that we might end up doing together, and I can't really talk about it, but
right.
yeah, it could be quite interesting and generally in this genre. So yeah.
Right, cool, very interesting. And you were referring to Kurzweil, "Singularity is Near," great book by Ray Kurzweil that I suggest to everyone. Absolutely interesting. So, in case we meet again, like in 12 months, or let's say Christmas next year, okay, and I will bring my Pandoro. In Italy, we have this cake called Pandoro, which is like like a cake. It's a Christmas cake, and we're there for Christmas. And what do you think will be the situation of this crazy Web3 world, the crypto, Bitcoin, Metaverse, DeFi? I mean, every day there is so much going on that my brain is exploding. What do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah, maybe it will be a sort of singularity of sorts, since you bring up that word, where the kind of people who are on the forefront, can really do, I would say, like a complete system exit, because so many things of the kind of classic, infrastructure stuff. But the really great thing, is that you're kind of creating a new form of like global citizen, right? People who are kind of thinking globally, but like and potentially also concerned. I think some of our globe, like around the real global issues, like there's this whole, I don't know, green pill thing that just came out of the Gitcoin community that I'm very enthusiastic with, this solar punk movement. But our international governmental organizations have not exactly solved a lot of the larger global issues that are kind of the most pressing for the world. And not everyone in DeFi cares about those things, to be frank. In fact, I would say there's a kind of large segment of the cryptocurrency community that doesn't care at all. But the people who do care and are wanting to build something new are able to network with each other and share resources and actually make that a core thing. And it may take, again, another decade to really develop to the scale that it needs to be globally impactful. But I think the seeds are there, and I don't know, spend my time watering them as necessary to kind of hope that they kind of grow up to be fully fledged trees and provide shelter and shade and all of that.
Solar punk movement is the name.
Yeah, solar punks is one thing. Yeah, there's a kind of solar lunar punk, but basically it refers to people who have this idea of building the future, but not necessarily in a sustainable way, like I want to build it out of hay, but I want to build it in a way that is like illustrating the future, but where we're also caring for ecology, we're caring for the communal good. We have a concept of public goods that's like core to our identity, but we're also willing to go out there and do new things. We're willing to use new technologies. Like we're not like, constrained by the ideas of what people were doing last century.
I see. Yeah, it's funny, Joel, because when I launched my NFTs, I wanted to moderate, let's say, the impact, climate impact, and I bought a forest of 1,000 trees. Okay, and I thought, it is a good thing. At least I give my little, contribution, and no one really cared. Like no one, like zero. There was no interest at all, which is also expensive because, I mean, if you buy a forest, it's not really cheap. But I noticed that there is maybe, so a part of the Web3 community maybe is interested in this topic, but the majority probably is still only maybe. Do you think, because a friend of mine the other day who owns a crypto exchange said, all of this speculation and people are interested to make money, blah, blah, blah. On one side is obviously bad because you only see that side. The media only pick that side, the people that want to make money online with crypto and so on. But on the other side, at least you attract people in and then they start to go into this, let's say, new world. I don't know, what's your take on that?
It's a complicated one, yeah, because I've seen the best and the worst, honestly, of the whole sort of industry side. And the best is amazing, but the worst is sometimes a little bit, dark, and people as well. They're just basically misleading people, like they're selling things that don't exist, kind of dreams, things that aren't really all the way there, and yeah, basically deceiving people at some significant scale. and they're doing, the regulators can't catch us because we're decentralized,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not enthusiastic about that particular part of it.
Got it. What do you think about all of the scams at the moment that are there, the hacks? Every day there is something. I mean, also in Web 2, there are a lot of, phishing and problems. It's not that Web 2 doesn't have, and I use Web 2, Web 3 like is a marketing buzzword just to say that, let's say the more centralized world, the financial traditional system, they have a lot of problems with phishing and frauds and attacks. So, but what I see in Web3, every day there is something, and you really feel, I don't know, at least maybe it's my personal perception, you don't really feel very safe. If I go on OpenSea, I always double check, is it a scam, is a link, this is true, collection is false, I don't know, is a very tricky feeling. I was wondering if you think that there is, let's say, is an industry that try to go too fast, and the industry doesn't think enough about the good principles of safety, infrastructure, and everything, or is just, that when you start to have new platforms, there are bugs and there are problems and you can't do anything about it?
I think it's both, so like I said before, people were concerned about some of these infrastructure things in the early Ethereum days, and then it's like people forgot about them, or they're just like, where can I get the most money the most quickly? Oh my goodness, what's the new thing? Oh, it's going up tomorrow, and they kind of forget about that. But some of the early, Ethereum people, like the founding fathers, I would say, like Stefan Tuul, who was basically the person who led all the community engagement for Ethereum for a long time, have come out quite publicly and in a way that I support, saying, a lot of this NFT craze, like it's not really supporting anything that has clear, long-standing value for, even just Web3 itself. I mean, the whole ecosystem could collapse and effectively cannibalize itself, not to say for the world or the other things. And what motivated some of us to, maybe can qualify as like a founding father, certainly Stefan does, is that we had a passion for transforming the world with this technology. Like, we were in it because we wanted to see freedom be enhanced. We wanted to see, real technological change as far as funding things that wouldn't get funded otherwise, that were positive, like in the research side or whatever else. And so to see it kind of get sidetracked and some of these scams take over is sad, and I think sometimes we do have to I reflect personally in a sometimes quite painful way. In some ways it's like I would rather work, with someone like Elon on something that is new, and actually but includes these principles baked into it, than something that is just, like kind of like lost its, moral grounding or just a purpose at all, So sometimes you feel that looking, and you just say, like, there's really no purpose behind this anymore. And it's, kind of in the end, I don't know.
Got it. It's interesting because someone like Elon, if you want to launch a rocket in the space, I mean, there are so many parts that you have to be careful about. And of course, you can rush and you can go fast, but you have to be really, really, you need great principles, I think, to put everything together, and then be sure that this rocket works for real. And if you put people in, it doesn't blow up. So the same level of attention probably should be put into, Web3 projects, platforms that deal with people, money, or stuff like that. So interesting. Apart from Metaverse, to close our conversation, Joel, is there any interesting project that you following, that you think, wow, this is really cool? Anything to suggest?
Yeah, great question. I always like people to know that I'm a poet and I write cat poems, because I'm very excited about the cat poems and Egyptian stuff. So that's a personal thing. But I think just in general, there is I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about the kind of Ukraine stuff today, because as much as I'm in the metaverse, I have a ton of people that are working for me and working on Metastrift that are basically being invaded right now, and generally speaking they're not happy about it, and they're concerned about their future. And there's very things when you look, oh well, what does it take to defend yourself? Oh well, we don't have enough tanks, because they have more tanks than us. And it's like, well, how does the Web3 help me defend my family, from a bunch of tanks that are rolling over the border right now? So that's been, taking a lot of my thought today, because, I think realistically I can help my team and my people be safe, which is a good, first principle. And good starting point. And I'm really thankful for the other co-founders, because we're prioritizing that, and kind of family people and all of that. But how can we really do that at scale and protect freedom and enhance freedom with all the things that are in that stack? And in fact, I've been a little critical of some of the other, DeFi maximalists and people out there, because I think that the technology stack of freedom, it has to include some of these basic things like, safety as a kind of core, thing that I can basically have the freedom to say what I think without, people coming down on me. I have to be able to, have the kind of core goods there. And, it's fortunately like neglected. I think a lot of frankly, I mean, I actually have a book coming out about this as well, and the research stuff on kind of anthology. But I think a lot of the people who even wrote the original literature behind some of these, cryptocurrencies, and had the idea, like Tim May, the original crypto anarchy people, lived in an age of plenty. They lived in an age where they did not have to go to war to protect themselves, and so they could say, the federal government does nothing for me. I doesn't need to exist. I can just do whatever I want. Basically, why is it restricting my freedoms? And unfortunately, people who live in places where the government is the only thing that's protecting them from tanks that are coming across the border do not have the liberty to just, futz around and buy NFTs all the time. So it's maybe of a sobering thought, but I think it's a kind of important one to keep in the mix.
I was shocked this morning, also because, I turned 50 this year. So, I didn't see, I lived in Italy. We never had a war. I live in UK. I never saw a war. So I think we're very lucky about that. And I was reading a conversation about why Bitcoin would be important in a situation like that. And the theory behind is that, of course, Russia invade Ukraine, for instance. They freeze immediately. Bank account is frozen. So if you have money there, it's lost. And people say, well, if you have your Bitcoin, it's good. But there are a few things that maybe I would consider. First, if you don't have electricity, because I come in and I, shut down everything that is in the country, that's problem number one. Problem number two is that if the army come in your house and say, all right, do you have wallet? Give me Bitcoin, or I shoot. Then you give the wallet, then you give the word. So of course, it's better than a bank account, but it's not this perfect solution that protects your money no matter what. So in real life is probably different, I guess, unfortunately.
Well, interestingly enough, the first public presentation I gave about cryptocurrencies was at the Institute for the Future, which is a think tank based in Palo Alto. And we had Vitalik there on a panel in very, very early days, when no one knew who Vitalik was. And but I was actually not talking about cryptocurrency per se. I was talking about building a global macroeconomic hedge against the instabilities in, the sort of nation state system writ large, and including, the possibility of hyperinflation that comes from these sort of mainstream currencies, which I think is still a very, realistic concern. And that cryptocurrency may have part of the solution, but to your point, it doesn't really have the full solution. And as I've gone back to the drawing board a couple of times to, design some of these things, usually on my own, because whatever reason, still regulators are worrying about other things. There's not a very clear solution, and I'm in here, interesting enough, sitting around with like these German guys who like have hordes of like precious and colored stones, and like, oh, we can do the colored stone thing, and going back to very like the physical version of currency, like this is going to hold value because it's, a colored gemstone. And it's very interesting to kind of be in part of these conversations from people who don't take for granted, that the internet will even continue to exist.
Yeah,
If in these
that's a
kind
good
of
point.
situations, like, can Putin turn off the internet?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Maybe he can. I think it's a real concern. And I also was the first Satoshi roundtable, and I was sitting around, and I think like I was like, I don't think these people around me really know how the internet works. Like they don't actually know like how routers work. They don't know how these things work. Like I feel like I don't want to like tell you like think about the core part of that stuff, but I like so yeah, I don't know. I think people are maybe going to be into a kind of rough awakening at some point that the things
Yeah,
they thought
that's a
they
good
could take
point.
for granted, they can't actually take for granted. And
Probably,
this
Joe,
is
you should like invent like a decentralized electricity first, so that you always have electricity to run. I mean, decentralized. I saw Helium that they go for a sort of decentralized telco project, something like that. But I mean, then when there is brute force and an army that come to you, how do you protect your assets? I mean, that's very complicated, no matter what I think. But I hope that this situation will solve. And what about Bitcoin? What do you expect about Bitcoin? It will be like when I hear Michael Saylor speaking, he say, all right, Bitcoin is gold 2.0, and 21 million Bitcoin is a store of value, is a great store of value. Do you see it that way for the next period?
Well, I don't know. It's a short version. I've always had mixed feelings about it. I've been there since, day one when people have been sort of, shilling Bitcoin, and let's say 2010. That's when I was first kind of aware and involved a little bit. And I am aware that it was a great investment class for there, but is it eternal? Is it really digital gold? I think even the people who designed it, I know Nick Szabo, for example, I read his bit gold thing. We're aware of the flaws, that it couldn't be gold and everything they wanted it to be. So I think they, did a great job in attempting to get it to as close to gold as possible. But will it really be that? But at the very least, it's a global hedge against the kind of instabilities in the global macro system, and is being done and has some kind of buffer against that. And I think that, for example, in places where there already is, paper hyperinflation, like happened in Venezuela, Bitcoin is pretty much the best you could do. So in that sense, and potentially the only thing you could do. So when we don't always live in a world of perfect alternatives. We have what's there. So yeah, get Bitcoin if then have some Bitcoin in somewhere.
Yeah, and it's good to have options. At least you have more options, and
yeah.
and that's definitely better. Joel, thank you so much for this conversation. Good luck for everything, and I hope to see you soon in the metaverse or in real life. I mean, one of those two. In the metaverse, I will have long hair. I tell you, like Elvis Presley, big long hair. That will be definitely my way to do it.
Well, yeah, my project is called the Metametaverse, so you can even have your own metaverse in which you have your own thing if you want. So yeah,
I can have the metaverse, the meta bold metaverse, where only bold people can go in. Thank you so much,
There's
Joel. Good luck for everything.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Bye.